3 spine-chilling true blackout horror tales. Unexplained nightmares revealed in sinister shadows. The night felt heavy, like an ominous whisper teasing at Jenna's spine, as storm clouds shrouded her Ohio neighborhood. She had just tucked in her 2 kids, their small faces framed against pillows, blissfully unaware of the lurking dread that was about to unfold. Jenna poured herself a glass of wine, trying to ease the strain left by her husband's abandonment. Just then, an eerie noise echoed from her backyard, something raspy, scratching against the fence. What could it be? Thunder rattled the windows. The air grew thick, pressing around her chest. At first, she convinced herself it was only the wind dancing through the dead leaves. But the sound kept returning like footsteps. The hairs on her arms stood up. Swallowing hard, she peeked outside. The moon slipped behind a cloud, shrouding the world in unnatural darkness. Maybe it was just her neighbor, Mr. Grayson? His lingering gaze always felt a bit too intimate, a tad too disconcerting. But surely he wouldn't be prowling at night, would he? The storm raged, and an unsettling chill wound through her home. She tried to shake it off. Just a storm, just her imagination. But then, she heard her children whispering from the room. Fear curled around her heart as they murmured about a man in the dark watching them play. A sudden, raw wave of panic washed over her. Her mind raced backward. Mr. Grayson had crept into their lives slowly, helping with odd jobs around the house, smiling too widely, eyes glinting with something she couldn't quite name. Her phone buzzed abruptly in the stillness, jolting her. A message from a friend, warning about someone in the neighborhood, someone targeting single mothers. Jenna, stay alert, it read. A knot twisted in her stomach. She voiced a shaky breath, clenching the phone, every word reading like a proclamation of doom. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The pounding rain grew more insistent as she cast one last glance at the shadowy backyard. Was it her imagination, or were there faces peering through the leaves? A cold tremor slithered up her spine. The whispers from the children turned frantic. "He's going to get us, Mommy." They were locked in a grip of sheer terror, their eyes wide, shoulders trembling. The shadow outside seemed to dart back. Heart racing, Jenna felt trapped in her own skin. Every creak of the house a reminder of the danger lurking just beyond. What if Mr. Grayson was closer than she thought? The very thought set her heart pounding. Taking a deep breath, Jenna fixed her resolve. They had to leave. But as she reached for the door, something moved outside, silhouetted against the street lamp's flickering light, something that sent her blood running cold. She half turned, breath hitching, staring at the outline. And just then, it stepped forward into a moment of light, a face that looked all too familiar. The night grew solid with terror, compressing all her fears into a shocking revelation. The kind of monster closest to home could sometimes be the one who smiled too long. Where could she hide? What could she do? The storm seemed to mirror her confusion, and dread seeped deeper than the rain itself. Was the nightmare only beginning? Jenna's heart thundered in her ears, drowning out the drumming rain. The figure stood motionless just outside the flickering glow of the street lamp, the familiar face twisting into a cruel smile. It was Mr. Grayson, but it wasn't he, the same man she thought she knew. The storm winds howled around her, adding to the chaos in her mind. Mommy, her children's voices quivered, urging her attention back. She glanced at their terrified faces illuminated by the nightlight, eyes wide with fear as they clutched each other. The playful innocence of her kids evaporated, replaced by pure dread. He's not the man he pretends to be. Jenna clenched her fists, the buzz of her phone forgotten in her grip. She fought the urge to cry. Fear flooded her veins, making her limbs feel heavy. The idea of staying felt dangerous, but the thought of retreating from that door haunted her. "Stay here," she whispered, though it sounded more like a plea to herself. The floorboards creaked beneath her weight as she edged towards the front window. Could she really escape? Was it worth risking it? Mr. Grayson's eyes were piercing in the dim light, unblinking, as if he could see through her house's walls, sensing her every breath. Outside, the rain cascaded as if trying to drown out Jenna's rising panic. She knelt beside a potted plant, desperate to keep her breath steady. She couldn't let him see her quivering. Suddenly, Mr. Grayson took a step closer to the house, and Jenna froze. The air thickened. That man who had helped with repairs, who had offered a pie on a random Tuesday, was now a sinister figure, a looming shadow gathering at her doorstep. The walls seemed to pulse around her as another crash of thunder echoed. Jenna's eyes darted to her kids, still wide-eyed and trembling in the soft yellow glow of their room. The innocence of their world was shattered. The whispers had grown quiet, but their fear was palpable. The shadow on the porch shifted, and Jenna's heart sank. She had a decision to make. Should she confront the monster or shield her children at any cost? She remembered her friend's warning, and the cold knot in her stomach tightened. "What are you doing out there, Mr. Grayson?" she called, her voice cracking, a mix of defiance and terror. He didn't reply. Instead, he tilted his head, studying her, as if savoring her fear. "Just checking on you, Jenna," he said, his voice coated with syrupy sweetness. "I wanted to make sure everything was all right." Her stomach twisted as revulsion washed over her. Who was this man? And why did he still smile? "Everything is fine," she said, forcing herself to sound calm even as she picked up the kitchen knife from the countertop. A dark laughter bubbled up from his throat. The sound sent chills racing across her skin. "You shouldn't hide, Jenna. Hiding is for the weak." Grinding her teeth, Jenna prepared herself for what came next. The world outside was drenched in rain, but she focused on the glimmering blade that felt heavy in her trembling grip, the only thing standing between her children and this monster. "Open the door and let us talk, shall we?" he taunted, stepping closer, his demeanor oddly casual, as if they were discussing the weather instead of life and death. She swallowed hard, fear barbed into her throat. What was he capable of? What plan did he have swirling in that treacherous mind? Then, without so much as blink, he lunged towards the door. A scream scratched at Jenna's throat as she bolted back, her mind racing. What was about to break loose in this storm? Where was safety when the monster was already inside her life? The calm silence after his sudden movement sent a shiver down her spine. Would it end tonight, or was the worst yet to come? The door rattled violently as Mr. Grayson slammed against it, the old wood buckling under the weight of his desperation. Jenna's breath hitched, and panic surged through her. Her heart pounded like a war drum, and she gripped the knife tighter. The dim kitchen was filled with a blend of fear and adrenaline, fueling her instinctive fight-or-flight response. "Let me in, Jenna," he shouted, and his tone changed from sweet to jagged, a sharp edge of menace behind his words. "You don't want to make me angry." The pounding continued, each thud a reminder of her fragility. Outside, the rain hammered down, creating a symphony of chaos that matched the discord in her mind. She wanted to bolt for the back door, to grab her kids and flee, but she couldn't abandon them. "Not now. Mommy, I'm scared," her eldest whimpered from the shadows. Jenna glanced back at their fragile silhouettes. Their world had flipped upside down, innocence consumed by the dark. "I know, sweetie. Stay quiet," she whispered, keeping her voice soothing despite the storm raging inside her. Mr. Grayson's laugh cut through her like ice, unsettling and horrendous. "You think hiding will save you? I know every secret, Jenna. They've all told me." Her blood turned to ice. What did he mean? Who had told him what? Were her fears just whispers in the dark? "Your little ones? I want to meet them," he said, his voice dripping with false warmth, as if he were just a concerned neighbor, not the monster looming outside her door. That was it. The blade trembled in her grasp as Jenna stepped back, her instincts screaming. He wanted her to break, to shatter, but she couldn't let that happen. "Leave us alone," Jenna shouted, finding a small reserve of courage. You don't know what you're messing with. Silence hung in the air, thick and heavy. The storm roared outside. The winds howled in agreement, threatening to tear her home apart. But within that silence, Jenna felt a pulse, a heartbeat. Mr. Grayson was waiting, savoring her fear. Suddenly, she heard a soft, subtle noise, a scraping sound, like claws scratching against the wood. Jenna whipped around, her heart racing even faster. It was coming from the back door. "Mommy," one of her children whispered, their little voice shaking. The back door. It was only a few steps away, but the very thought of turning her back on the front door sent her stomach churning. "Stay here," she hissed to the kids. But they weren't moving. They were frozen in place like deer in headlights. How could she protect them from that monster and what lurked behind her? The door shuddered again. Mr. Grayson's face mere inches from the glass pane. Twisted and predatory, he flashed a grin that wasn't human. "You're making this harder than it needs to be, Jenna. Just let me in." She glanced back at her kids. They were on the verge of tears, terror glimmering in their eyes. She took a deep breath, forcing her mind to race through options. Should she confront him, or barricade the door? Behind her, the scratching became louder, a desperate plea trying to break into her sanctuary. Her kitchen was surrounded on both sides by nightmares, Mr. Grayson at the front, and whatever waited at the back. Something snapped within her. She couldn't wait for courage to find her. In this moment of dread, she had to act. "Grab my hand," she yelled as she dashed for the back door, adrenaline pumping, ready to force her way into the unknown. But just as she reached for the knob, it turned slowly on its own. What awaited her beyond the door? Would she find safety or unleash a greater horror? Jenna's heart was a thunderstorm in her chest as the back door's knob twisted. It didn't matter that it was just her shaking hand on the other side. The very act of it turning felt like a promise of doom. She yanked it back, gripping the knife like it was a lifeline, ready to face whatever terrifying reality awaited her. The door creaked open, revealing darkness, not the relief of light, but an empty void that seemed to breathe and pulse. A scent of damp earth seeped through, cold and musty, clawing at her senses. "Mommy," her children whispered again, fear lacing their voices. The dread kept swelling inside her, and she wanted to scream. Jenna slowly, cautiously stepped back, her instincts screaming that the back door was a point of no return. In that moment, Mr. Grayson's laughter echoed once more, twisting through the kitchen like a sinister wraith. It sent a shiver rippling down her spine. "You think you can escape? The door is wide open." Jenna. He wanted to invade her mind, unearth secrets she had buried deep, but his words stirred a fire inside her. She couldn't falter now. She rounded on her kids. "We have to go." She grabbed their hands. But before she could sprint for the front door, the back door thudded against the wall, as if an unseen force had pushed it. Jenna nearly lost her balance, fear sharpening. What was out there? In a flash, her thoughts rushed to the den she had abandoned weeks prior, layers of darkness shrouding memories she couldn't bear to recall. It had always lurked in the corners of her mind, a time when nothing seemed real, and everything felt like a nightmare. The scratching became a growl, raw and hungry, a beast waiting just behind solid wood. She turned back, desperation clawing at her throat. Mr. Grayson was still outside, his face a mask of twisted anticipation pressed against the glass. "They don't need to see the monsters, Jenna, because you're the one who brought them here." "Shut up," she snapped, but there was a tremor in her voice, betraying her rising terror. Every second felt like an eternity, and those dreadful secrets threatened to rise like phantoms around them. With a surge of adrenaline, Jenna swung the knife at the back door, ready to drive it into whatever monster waited behind. But there was only darkness, edges creeping and closing in, as if the shadows were shaping themselves into a life of their own. The kids tugged at her, their little fingers quivering. "Mommy, stay with us," she reassured them, eyes darting between the front and back doors, both guards now occupied by nightmares. The world had shrunk to this kitchen, a fragile bubble in an ocean of chaos. but barriers made of wood and faith felt increasingly tenuous. That a fluttering noise suddenly erupted from the back, something small and rapid moving in the shadows. Jenna twisted to see what it was, and at that moment, something cold brushed against her ankle. She recoiled, slashing the knife. But what she glimpsed wasn't a creature. It was a piece of torn fabric, floating gently down like a fallen leaf. It was part of one of her children's shirts, a remnant from an earlier, serene day. I can't. Her voice cracked, doubt flooding in. Then a piercing scream cut through the holds of the storm, resonating from the front door. It wasn't just Mr. Grayson anymore. This scream belonged to someone else, someone familiar. Mommy! That terrible, heart-stopping sound had not come from her children. Jenna froze, paralyzed by the flickering shadows wrapping around her. What had she unleashed? The kitchen wasn't the sanctuary it once was. The monsters had come to play. What horror had come through the front door? And who had called out for help? She had to find out. Jenna's breath hitched in her throat, her heart thumping in an erratic, fearful rhythm. The kitchen, once filled with the mundane sounds of family life, now felt like a claustrophobic tomb. That scream, her name, it raked across her mind like nails on a chalkboard. Who could possibly be in her house, crying out for her? Mommy! The voice called again, louder, a desperate plea wrapped in terror. Jenna turned, her eyes darting toward the front door, where the sound had erupted. Her instincts screamed at her to run, to throw open the door and reclaim whoever was there. But Mr. Grayson's shadow danced against the yard's fading light, a reminder of the hell outside. No, she wouldn't fall into his trap. Stay close, Jenna whispered fiercely to her kids, clutching them tighter. The knife felt heavier in her hand, its pointed edge digging into her palm as her grip tightened. They needed to hide, to escape, but where? The basement? The closets? Mommy! I'm scared. Her youngest trembled as he pulled at her shirt. Shush, she whispered, panic threatening to splinter her composure. We're okay. Just stay quiet. The world outside the door felt like it was alive, ready to swallow her whole. Shadows twisted unnaturally, creeping forward with the brightening dark. Jenna desperately searched for a way out. But what if it was a trap? What if the voice was just another illusion crafted by Mr. Grayson? Suddenly, the front door thudded against the wall, flinging open with an eerie creak that echoed in the silence. A silhouette framed in the doorway, just a moment of stillness before it lunged into the dim light, sending Jenna stumbling back, heart racing. Mommy! It was her eldest son, his wide eyes filled with fright and confusion. I thought you were lost. The moment took form. A heartbreaking relief flooded through her, churning with guilt and fear. She had almost given in to the monster's voice. But before she could gather her thoughts, he stepped further in, eyes darting behind him. What's wrong? She asked, the knife extending at her side, ready, poised for any danger. There's something outside. Jenna felt the walls constrict around them, the air becoming heavy, charged with an unshakable dread. The shadows in the kitchen seemed to curl toward the front door, eager to pull them back into darkness. It was as if the house had come alive, hungry for the fright that filled her. Close the door, she shouted, adrenaline fueling her urgency. But as her son rushed back to obey, a roar erupted from the darkness outside. Something monstrous, something far worse than she imagined. The sound blasted through the air, primal and angry, shaking the very ground beneath her feet. Mommy! What is that? He stood frozen, eyes wide. Get inside. Jenna pushed her kids behind her, taking a step toward the open doorway. The fear coursed through her veins, mingling with anger. But what emerged wasn't Mr. Grayson. It was a colossal shadow, blending sorrow with hunger, fangs bared in a hollow grin, as though it devoured light itself. Jenna gasped, realizing this was not just a figment of her imagination. They hadn't just summoned memories from their past. They had called forth something new. What do we do? Her son whimpered, face pale and frozen in terror. Run! She screamed, terror sparking through every part of her being. They dashed to the back, but the darkness lurked behind as if, At any moment, it could wrap them in its icy grip. Jenna felt cold sweat dripping down her back, the knife slipping from her fingers and clattering to the floor. In that instant, darkness flooded the kitchen, swallowing them whole, and she couldn't help but wonder, were they still fighting to survive, or had they already lost? As the shadows closed in, choking out light, Jenna realized she had one final choice to make. Would she confront the monstrosity that awaited them, or would she surrender to the darkness? What could possibly await them in the depths of that looming shadow? What horrors would they uncover if they stepped forward? The darkness felt alive, suffocating, pulling Jenna toward a bottomless void. She steadied herself, heart pounding thunderously in her ears. "We have to move," she urged, grasping her children's hands. But the shadows weren't just looming. They were shifting, coiling like serpents around her ankles, anchoring her to the floor. "Mom, please," her eldest cried, terror distorting his voice. The palpable fear stretched taut, settling like ice in Jenna's spine. Behind them, the cavernous jaws of the shadow gaped wider, almost tasting the family's despair. Hungry for their panic, with a desperate shove, Jenna yanked her kids toward the laundry room, a small warren of forgotten memories, the door closing with a hollow thud that echoed like a coffin lid sealing shut. Inside, the darkness thinned slightly, replaced by the faint scent of fabric softener and dust. They huddled together, breaths shallow. "Mom, what is it?" whispered her youngest, eyes glossy with tears. "It's just a shadow," she lied, though her heart sank under the weight of uncertainty. Would a mere shadow roar like that? An ominous grinding noise slithered under the door, a dark promise that the horror wasn't deterred. "Mommy," her son whimpered again, hands shaking as he clutched her shirt. She stroked his hair, trying to instill a calm that she didn't feel. "Listen to me," she said, voice trembling but firm. "We need to be quiet. Quiet until we figure this out." The plan cracked under the pressure. The sound outside grew louder, more insistent, like claws scraping against the wood. Footsteps echoed now, heavy and deliberate, as if whatever prowled outside was savoring the hunt. This wasn't the work of Mr. Grayson, this was a creature born from nightmares. Jenna's mind raced through every childhood story that warned of dark things lurking just beyond the light. A gurgling growl reverberated, each sound layering dread thick in the air. She clutched her boys, feeling their warmth, their heartbeats synchronizing with her own panic. "We need to escape," she hissed, urgency threading through her whisper. The laundry room had one window, a slim slice of hope. Jenna turned, the dim light barely illuminating the clutter. "Follow me," she whispered, her voice barely concealing the dread clawing at her insides. As they made their way to the window, another thunderous roar erupted, shaking the very foundation of their home. Felt like a warning, a proclamation that they wouldn't reach safety. "Hurry," she urged, but their small forms hesitated, insecurity gripping them like a vice. Jenna hoisted her eldest towards the window, praying it would hold. But just as he reached the ledge, a bellowing howl erupted directly outside, freezing their moment. The shadows beneath the door thickened, threads of darkness lifting like a curtain, ready to unveil what waited beyond. Panic roared anew. "Mom!" her youngest screamed, a desperate sound that echoed into the pitch black. Jenna's resolve shattered. She pushed her child against the window, her strength abandoning her as she wrestled with her own fear. "Climb," she urged, shoving her son through the breach. Just then, the door buckled, splintering into 1,000 shards. A mass drifted through, a nightmare come to life. It was monstrous and grotesque, oozing malice and intent, eyes glowing like coals in the night. "Mommy!" they cried as the apparition lunged. But they had one last option, the other side of the window. Heart racing, Jenna threw herself and her last son through the opening, fighting against the fear gripping her throat. Searing dread consumed every thought. They landed in a heap, the ground hard and unforgiving. But before they could recover, the sound of claws against the floor grew louder, more defined, echoing like a death knell. They had made it outside, but the real horror was just beginning. The emptiness around them felt wrong, Shadows danced against the trees, flickering like the lost souls of the night. "Where are we?" her son whimpered, looking up at the encroaching gloom. "I don't know," Jenna whispered, her voice trailing into the night. Above them, the stars blinked the way they always had, indifferent to the terror beneath. But in the chilling wind, a voice whispered, promising that the nightmare was far from over. What had they unleashed? What hunted them through the encroaching dark? Jenna's chest felt tight, the night air thickening with a sense of impending doom. Shadows stretched toward them, jagged and unyielding, painting the ground with a darkness that did not dissipate. The trees loomed like sentinels, their gnarled branches twisting against the starry backdrop. But the stars became mere pinpricks, swallowed by the encroaching gloom. "Mom," her youngest son whispered again, his breath a ghost in the night. Jenna could barely meet his gaze. Those wide, innocent eyes reflected her own fears. She scanned the surrounding trees, hoping to glimpse any sign of safety. But all she saw was the creeping darkness, reaching out like an uninvited hand. The growls began again, lower, rumbling from deep within the shadowy woods. They were deliberate, almost playful, as if the beast enjoyed tormenting them. The air felt electric, each puff of wind sending a chill that rippled through her body. "Over there," her eldest pointed, a mix of hope and terror flooding his voice. A battered wooden shed sat at the edge of the yard, barely clinging to its foundations. "We can hide." With no better option, Jenna nodded, adrenaline coursing through her veins. "Go, now." She ushered them forward, their small feet pounding against the gravel. Jenna glanced over her shoulder, convinced something massive lurked just beyond the trees, stalking them like prey. They reached the shed, the door hanging at an odd angle. As she swung it open, the rusty hinges screamed a protest, a noise that reverberated through the night. Inside, darkness enveloped them again, thick and cloying, as if dawn had never broken here. "Mom, it smells like something dead." Her youngest curled close, shivering against her. She inhaled deeply, her nostrils flaring. The scent was nauseating, a mixture of rot and earth, as if something had long since been buried and left to decay. "Stay close," she warned, guiding them deeper into the cramped space. Dust motes danced, illuminated by rare beams of moonlight seeping through the cracks. Jenna felt walls closing in, not just from clutter but from an overwhelming sense of doom. "We'll wait here until it's safe." It was a false safety. She could feel it in her bones. The growling had stopped, replaced by a disturbed silence, pregnant with the promise of violence. She peered through a crack, scanning the yard again. Her heart dropped. The apparition that had chased them was outside, silhouetted against the trees. Its form undulated, flickering like a film reel caught between frames. It was hunched over, clawed hands dragging through the dirt, weaving between the shadows. "Mom, what is that?" her son asked, voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know," she choked out, forcing herself to look away. "But we can't let it find us." Just then, a noise like snapping twigs echoed from outside. The creature seemed to freeze, head lifting as if it had heard them. Jenna's heart pounded in her ears, drowning out the growing fear that coiled around her stomach. And then, instinct kicked in. The thing had sensed movement, its glowing eyes penetrating the dark. "Get down," Jenna hissed as she crouched with her boys, pulling them beneath a rusty shelf. They could only wait, hope that whatever hunted them would pass by. The door rattled suddenly, and she stilled her breath. The creature's growls returned, low and menacing, just outside. It was toying with them, savoring the taste of fear wafting through the cracked walls of the shed. "Mommy," her youngest's voice broke the tenuous silence, panic rippling through him. "Shoo!" She pressed a finger to her lips, but as she did, the shed shuddered. The door swung inward, pushed by an unseen force. The monstrous shadow loomed at the entrance, blocking out the light. Its eyes glowed fiercely, pinpoints of terror aimed straight at Jenna. "Run!" she screamed, knowing that no hiding place could stifle the presence pushing inside. They burst from the cramped confines, adrenaline surging like a tidal wave. The darkness outside felt like a living entity, attempting to seize them once more. But it wasn't just the shed they needed to escape, it was the very night itself. They tore into the open space, screaming and sprinting toward the tree-line as the creature's roars echoed behind them. But just as Jenna thought they were free, a shadow split from the darkness, blocking their path. "Mom, it's here." Her eldest's voice dropped to a strangled whisper, fear coursing through the air thick like fog. Panic surged in Jenna's chest. She made a choice in that instant. "To the road," she shouted. But the shadows shifted once more, a swirling mass of terror that refused to let them escape. Racing towards their only chance, they stumbled, feet scrambling, as the beast loomed closer. They had escaped from one horror only to charge into another. Could they outrun it? Could they survive what lay ahead? The night pressed in, a nightmarish blanket threatening to swallow them alive. And the true horror, it hadn't even revealed itself yet. Jenna's legs felt like lead, each step toward the trees a battle against the suffocating grip of fear. The beast's guttural growls filled the air, metallic and jagged, merging with the rustle of leaves that seemed to echo their dread. Instinct took over, but survival felt impossible under the weight of that lurking darkness. "Mom, wait!" her eldest cried, desperation spilling from his voice. The three of them halted, breathless, heartbeats drumming like a war chant. Jenna turned, scanning the unsettling silhouettes behind them. She felt the heat of perspiration prickling her skin, her eyes darting from shadow to shadow. "Go," she urged, tears of pent-up fear threatening to spill over. They stumbled forward, plunging into the woods where the moonlight only occasionally pierced through the dense canopy. Branches scraped against them, sharp and unforgiving, as if the very woods were alive and infuriated at their intrusion. "Where are we going, Mom?" her youngest panted, clinging to her coat. "Anywhere but here." The answer slipped from her lips, raw and instinctive. They wove through the trees, the urgency driving her, but as they plunged deeper, Jenna could sense it trailing behind them, relentless and patient. Suddenly, a hollow thrum resonated from the heart of the woods. Was it just her imagination? Or was it something more sinister? The sound buzzed in her ears, drowning out her children's frightened cries. It felt like a heartbeat, a sinister signal vibrating through the very ground beneath them. "Mom!" her eldest shouted, pointing ahead. There, a sliver of light sliced through the endless darkness. "There's a house." Jenna squinted, hope flickering like a fragile candle flame against the looming shadows. The house looked ancient, its windows dark and unwelcoming, but it held the promise of safety, or at least a temporary refuge. "We have to make it there." Fueled by fear, they sprinted toward the fading light, desperation lending strength to their legs. The growling grew louder, more excited, as if sensing their hope. The terrifying realization slammed into Jenna. It enjoyed the chase. "Faster!" she cried, her voice an urgent whip crack through the air. But just as they reached the porch, cold fingers of darkness stretched to block their way. A figure stepped from the shadows, a woman, pale and gaunt, her eyes sunken and hollow like pits of despair. "Help us," Jenna gasped, but the woman merely stared, her mouth an empty void of despair. Before she could turn to grasp her sons and run, the world dimmed, the porch creaking beneath their feet. The house loomed unnaturally, tilting as if it were alive. Pulsations echoed, filling the air with an electric pulse that threatened to take their very breath. Jenna stumbled back against the doorframe, the sight of that gaunt woman making her stomach twist. "What is happening?" she hissed, panic coursing through her veins. The figure raised an arm, fingers curling into claws, beckoning them forward. But it was a warning to a trap, drawing them in deeper. Jenna felt her heartbeat quicken, and through the mounting terror, a realization dawned on her. This wasn't just about escape anymore. This was about choice. They could either step into the unknown of the house or face the beast still lurking just outside. "Mom, we can't stay here." Her son's voice quaked with urgency, but the ground trembled, vibrating like a heartbeat, drawing them closer with each passing second. "What do we do?" Her heart sank, a fierce battle echoing deep within her soul. Would staying bring safety, or would escape lead to death? Just then, a desperate howl sliced through the stillness, a haunting cry that reverberated into their bones. The beast lurked somewhere in the shadows, eager to claim its prize. "Mom!" Fear twisted her youngest's voice, and in that moment, time froze. They could run or they could stay, but either option felt like stepping directly into the jaws of death. Could they trust the light, or had they only stumbled into a different kind of darkness? The choice flashed before her, as agonizing as the darkness around them. Which way? Jenna's voice trembled, the answer slipping from her grasp. Where did they go from here? Jenna felt the air thicken, a suffocating shroud closing around her. Every fiber of her being screamed to run, but the gnarled shadows of the house loomed, daring her to make a choice. She glanced back at the woods, where the growl echoed again, deep, mocking, as if the beast were waiting for them to falter. "Mom!" The urgency in her son's voice spurred her forward, and with a steely resolve, she stepped through the doorway. The skin on her arms prickled with the sensation of unseen eyes watching, the air growing unnaturally cold. The interior was an eerie contrast to the exterior, dimly lit by flickering candles placed haphazardly on the walls. The scent of mildew hung heavy in the air, curling into her nostrils, filling her with dread. Shadows danced, elongating and contracting with the flicker of firelight. Jenna instinctively pulled her boys close, their warmth a fleeting comfort against the chill creeping into her bones. "Stay close," she whispered fiercely, peering into the darkness that seemed to be swallowing the room whole. The house creaked ominously around them, like a beast settling in for the night. "Mom, what is that?" her eldest whispered, pointing toward the far corner. A long, crooked figure emerged from the black, a collection of objects hanging and swaying from the ceiling, a collection of rusted tools, each with a grin that promised sharpness and pain. Jenna gulped, forcing herself to look away before the memories of the creature outside clawed their way back into her mind. In the center of the room stood a table, its surface slick with something dark and viscous fresh blood. Her heart roared in her chest as she turned, searching for an exit. The door behind them had already begun to close, a slow slamming that echoed like a countdown. "Mom!" The frantic tone in her youngest son's voice propelled her, and she moved toward the far wall, searching for a window, a potential escape route. But then there came a sound, a scraping, soft but unmistakable, from somewhere within the shadowy depths of the house. It felt purposeful, deliberate, as if someone was slowly making its way toward them. Savoring the thrill of the hunt and the flickering candlelight, Jenna caught sight of a doorway at the end of the hallway. It beckoned like a portal to salvation. Without another thought, she grabbed her children's hands and tugged them toward it, her heart racing each time the shadows shifted. "Please," she pleaded under her breath. The scraping grew louder, closer, like nails on wood drawing nearer, and panic surged. "We have to hurry." They burst through the doorway, and Jenna's heart sank. The room beyond was a kitchen, dark and oppressive, filled with strange, rusted knives mounted on the walls, their edges glinting menacingly. The wooden table was cluttered with jars, each one filled with murky slime and bits of unrecognizable objects. "Mom?" her eldest whispered, fear threading his voice as he spotted an open trapdoor in the corner of the room. "What if we go down there?" "Are you crazy?" she hissed, but as she looked back into the hallway, the scraping had stopped. Silence engulfed them, thick and heavy like a blanket stuffed down a throat. What if her son bit his lip? What if it's safer down there? The ground trembled again, and the house seemed to sigh. "We don't know what's in there," Jenna snapped, torn between terror and the urge to escape. Then came a voice, a soft, almost melodic sound, echoing from the depths of the trapdoor. "Help me, let me out." Cold fear wrapped around Jenna like a vice. Something was down there, begging for assistance. The instinct to save mixed with the primal urge to flee. She didn't trust the shrill, singing pitch. She didn't trust the silence of the beast that had pursued them. "No, we can't," she yelled, stepping forward. But the words rang hollow as something shifted in the shadows behind her. Something that had been waiting, watching, hungry. The moment hung heavy, every heartbeat an eternity. What lay beneath their feet? Was it salvation or doom? The choice was painfully real, and all too soon, decisions would be made. What would creep from the darkness first? The monster outside or the thing lurking in the trapdoor? Jenna's heart raced, adrenaline coursing through her as the weight of her choices draped around her like a shroud. The air grew colder, the darkness pressing in, mocking her hesitation. "Whatever is in there," she whispered, pointing toward the trapdoor, "we can't trust it." Her children huddled close, eyes wide with fear. The melodic voice called again, weaving through the air like a silken thread wrapped around a pouncing predator. Something sinister lay below. She could feel it gnawing at her resolve. The growling outside had subsided, but the tension in the house hummed louder than ever. Mommy, her eldest, interrupted, panic rising. "What do we do?" "We wait for a moment," she murmured, steeling herself. "We can't afford to act without thinking. We have to be smart." As the silence weighed heavy, Jenna turned and peered into the dark hall where they had come from. She dared not breathe. What had been chasing them could reemerge at any moment, and the only option was to decide fast. Mommy, her youngest, whimpered, and guilt curled tight in her chest. "I'm so scared," she crouched before them, looking into their innocent eyes. "I'm scared too," she admitted, her voice barely more than a whisper. "But I'm going to protect you. I'm always going to protect you." Her hand gripped the knife still in her possession, now a symbol of her fierce determination to keep them safe. Suddenly, the door behind them began to creak open, just a smidge, as if being nudged by invisible hands. Jenna shot to her feet, her instincts roaring into action. "We need to go. Now," she shouted. The very walls appeared to shudder, as if the house resented her decision. They stumbled toward the trapdoor, its edges looming like a gaping maw, a last resort with its risks far outweighed by the certainty of horror above. She could hear what sounded like distant howls creeping back into the silent house. Time was against them. "Climb down. Now," she urged, pushing her son gently yet firmly down through the opening. They landed on old, dusty earth, a slightly musty smell filling their lungs. The darkness enveloped them as they edged further into the small underground space. She turned to follow. A chill brushed against her skin, and dread flooded through. She could hear scratching clawing at the trapdoor's edge, the furious storm of primal rage trying to claw its way through. "Hurry!" she spat, fear gnashing at her sanity. The moment she jumped down, she heard a terrible crash from above. A great weight fell against the door, blocking the horror they had escaped but also sealing them beneath the earth's surface. She landed in a crouch, heart thundering. She held her boys tight, whispering, "It'll be okay. Stay close to me." Complete darkness enveloped them. Jenna fumbled at the cool, damp walls, seeking some sense of direction, and found a small light in the distance. Whispering words of encouragement, she nudged her children forward, instinct guiding them into the eerie glow emanating from a stone opening ahead. The unsettling ambience shifted. The space opened, revealing a cavern illuminated by shimmering phosphorescence, a surreal underworld, its phosphorescent glow pulsating like a heartbeat. It felt impossibly out of sync, like they had stepped into a dream. The walls glistened, damp and otherworldly. "Mom?" her eldest said softly, eyes shining in the strange ambience. "Just a bit further," she replied, trying to reassure herself as much as her kids. They stepped through the threshold into a larger chamber, every creak of their steps amplified in the eerie quiet. And then they saw it. Old pictures lining the walls framed photographs of a family long lost, faces twisted in sadness. Each seemed to pulse in and out of focus, shifting like memories not quite settled. It was then they realized the truth. The walls were layered in past lives, trapped in a photograph's chill sorrow, echoing laughter now lost to the shadows. "Mom," the greatest fear trembled in her eldest's voice. "Are we gonna be next?" "No," she replied fiercely, though uncertainty clawed deeper than ever. "We're going to survive." But as another growl resonated from beyond the cavern, reality twisted. Between their escape and the incoming darkness lay the choice and the reckoning of what they had seen and fled. They were no longer merely battling a monster. They were part of something larger, an unseen cycle threading through nightmares that forged lives into darkness. The shadows could sense their fear. Swirling around, they culled anticipation for the next move. To confront the monster haunting their dreams or embrace the darkness. Unearth the truths they had avoided. It was time to choose. Deep within her, an ember glowed, a resolve that was fed by love. Jenna mustered her strength. "We will face it," she said, locking eyes with her boys. "If we don't, it will consume us." With shaking hands, she returned the knife to her side, ready to face whatever awaited them. Together, they would reclaim their lives. Together, they were stronger. Together, they may survive. They nodded, grounded by the gravity of the moment. Holding hands, Jenna stepped forward, breathing deeply, ready to confront what had haunted her life for far too long. Just one step at a time. What awaited as they ventured further? The real monster, or perhaps the remnants of their past. Whatever the shadow claimed outside, they were ready to push back against the night together. Don't let the monsters win. You need to face your fears just like Jenna did. Now is the time to step out of your shadows. If you loved this conclusion, you need to subscribe immediately to tell us what you think. Don't miss out. Click that bell and select all notifications to stay updated on our exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm. It helps us reach more fans like you. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories. What did you think of the ending? And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your support is what drives us.